woman does not appear even once in the U.S. Constitution.
Nor does the word freedom, Your Honor.
Il n'y aura jamais qu'un seul empereur.
A pioneering professional fighting for justice and gender equality, an utterly Parisian love triangle featuring a faithful man, and Vincent Cassel embodies the Emperor of Paris. We're talking about all those movies this week with film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Well, Olivia.
Well, we're starting with a film which has a trick to get the audience interested. It has the word sex in the title. It's called On the Basis of Sex, starring Felicity Jones, who plays the young aspiring lawyer Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's now a US Supreme Court judge. Tell us what you thought.
Well, since you brought up sex, allow me to profess my love for this movie. I wouldn't change a thing about it, except perhaps for the way Felicity Jones's allegedly Brooklyn accent comes and goes when the sound of her voice is one of the most consistent things about the real Ginsburg, apart from her amazing intellect. The recent documentary, the Notorious RBG, did a very fine job of recounting how Ginsburg spearheaded society-changing legislation concerning gender discrimination and became a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. If I had to sum up Ginsburg's contributions and accomplishments in one sentence, I'd say, if you're female and breathing in America, you owe her big time. The film takes us back to Ruth's college years and shows us how her truly wonderful marital partnership with husband Marty made it possible for her to excel against the odds. As true stories go, this one is incredibly rich. They teach aspiring screenwriters that the key to a good screenplay is to put your characters through hell. Well, the obstacles that Ruth was confronted by would have foiled most women, but of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not most women. Let's take a look at young Ruth in mock court.
Why shouldn't men be nurses? And if women want to fight fires...
What about pilots?
Yeah, again, if women choose to take on these roles...
Judges?
Why not?
CEOs, generals? What about garbage men? You want to be a garbage man?
And if men want to be teachers or raise children, percentages aren't the point. People should be able to pursue their passions.
You're screwing it up, Ruth.
Have you read the appendix attached
You're making
to their
the wrong
brief? These
case.
are laws written by men who think we are privileged to be excused from men's obligations, but it is not a privilege, it is a cage, and these laws are the bars.
So the documentary that you mentioned provided us with the facts about her life, but I imagine it's quite a different experience when you see that all fleshed out by actors.
Oh, that's absolutely right. That's what I liked about it. Now, we can hear that when she was a first-year law student and Marty was diagnosed with a disease with only a 5% survival rate, that's one thing, but it's very compelling to see her attending not only her own classes at Harvard, but also his, so he won't fall behind. And she did all this while being the mother of a young daughter. We can hear that she was one of a handful of women admitted to Harvard Law in a class of over 500 men, and when the dean invited those women to dinner, but only to ask them to justify why they were taking up a valuable slot that a man could have been making use of. And so to see Ruth's, the way she handles that rude question is priceless. We can hear that although she graduated at the top of her class, not a single New York law firm would hire her. It's especially edifying to see what potential employers say to her during those interviews. And there's a brilliant scene at a cocktail party where other lawyers are kind of making fun of Marty because he's a tax lawyer and they assume that must be pretty dull. And Marty explains why tax law is actually at the core of modifying human behavior, and we absolutely believe him.
Well, I'm sure it's easier to make the argument for tax law as in this film when you're being played by Armie Hammer.
Yes, it is. But the real-life Marty was also too good to be true. He did all the cooking for the family, and he was secure enough in his own masculinity to spur his wife to ever greater heights. Now, I'm a sucker for courtroom dramas, and what this film makes clear is that because she couldn't get a job as a lawyer and went into teaching instead, when she argued her first case on sex discrimination on behalf of a man who was being discriminated against, she had never actually argued a case in a real courtroom before. I was sweating bullets for her. Now, many critics have accused this of being told in an old-fashioned manner that seems sort of out of step with current norms platforms for societal equality. Well, gosh, it's directed by a woman. And yet nobody's accusing A Star is Born, directed by a man, of being terminally old-fashioned, when I swear I saw some dinosaurs buying tickets.
Okay, well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a truly inspiring woman today. Next, Louis Garrel. He's been acting since he was 6 years old, and he co-stars now in his second film as the director. It's called A Faithful Man, and what did you think of it?
I enjoyed this. It's a wisp of a movie that knowingly taps into the French New Wave while attributing the lion's share of the relationship power not to a man, but to a woman. It starts with an expansive overhead shot of the Paris skyline with the Eiffel Tower visible, suggesting a certain kind of story. But then it ambushes us with an opening exchange that's ridiculously low-key and dramatically dazzling at the same time. Now, Louis Garrel plays Abel. He's upright and true because, no joke, he works right here at France 24.
He does.
The story spans a bit more than a decade, and for somebody trained to get to the bottom of events, I have to say he's strangely willing to accept open-ended developments in his own life. Now, he's been contentedly living for a few years with Marianne, played by Laetitia Casta, in the apartment she owns. On the morning the film starts, she announces to him that she's pregnant. He's thrilled to hear it. And then she says that he's not the father. Who is? The answer is interesting, and so is Abel's reaction. Now, most viewers would expect a fight or at least an argument with raised voices, but we get something entirely different. A decade later, Eve, played by Lily Rose Depp, enters the equation.
Okay, well, indeed, France 24 spoke to Louis Garrel about the geometry of romance when two women desire the same man, followed by a glimpse of a faithful man. Take a look.
C'est ce qu'on a voulu faire avec Jean-Claude, raconter que le monde était.
We wanted to show a world run by women, that these women were queens. The guy is stuck in the middle, just there to obey their orders.
Le garçon, l'intérieur, il avait juste qu'à obéir d'une certaine manière.
It is a bit shocking for some men, as my character of Abel can be seen as the opposite of masculine. I think finally being this way makes him stronger, as you always want to see him. He's never upset, for example. If you hurt him, he gets back on his feet.
Si on le tape, il s'en remet assez rapidement.
Tu vis avec Abel, tu l'aimes pas? Et moi je l'aime depuis toujours.
Toi?
Oui, moi. Je ne peux pas t'expliquer pourquoi. Moi, la première, je comprends pas. Alors je te le demande. Laisse-le-moi.
Et si moi je te dis non?
Alors c'est la guerre. Et puis on verra bien qui gagnera.
An enviable position that he's in there, I think. So Louis Garrel, who's only 35 years old, co-wrote the script with Jean-Claude Carrière, who's 87, and he's a bit of a legend.
Oh, he is indeed. Every young filmmaker should be so lucky. Jean-Claude Carrière is a living national treasure. He was born in a small rural farming community and grew up to be a Renaissance man of the arts, writing screenplays for Louis Buñuel, Milos Forman, Louis Malle, wrestling the Mahabharata into manageable shape for Peter Brook's theater troupe, authoring books and essays rife with humor and insight. Louis Garrel says that the opening scene that sets the tone for the entire waltz of affections to come is Carrière's doing. More of that, please. Louis Garrel is French film royalty. His grandfather, Maurice, was a prominent actor. His father, Philippe, started making challenging, personal, often emotionally devastating films as a teenager and has never stopped. Louis's mother, Brigitte C., is a film director. His siblings are actors. This is his second film as a director, as you said. The first one, Two Friends in 2015, was a bittersweet tale of two guys and one girl. This one is a bittersweet tale of one guy and two girls.
Indeed, Louis Garrel, he is a part of the dynasty. Now, next, let's take a look at a period drama which is on French screens at the moment. It's called The Emperor of Paris. It's set in 19th century France. And Vincent Cassel stars as François Vidocq, a larger-than-life character who was a true character from history. And Vidocq was famous for escaping from prisons. He's well known here in France, but relatively obscure elsewhere. So is this film something of an education for those of us who don't know him?
Well, if by education Vacation, you mean? Struggling to stay awake while the teacher drones on at the blackboard? Yes, yeah, that it is. All the elements are available here for a really exciting historical epic set during Napoleon's reign. The recreation of Paris is fetching, the cast is talented, and yet the result is frustratingly ho-hum. Vidocq was the proverbial bundle of contradictions. He's been the subject of other movies, of TV series. Accused of a murder he did not commit, Vidocq makes a deal with the head of the police to find the real killer and help round up an impressive number of his fellow criminals in exchange for a document clearing his name. Since the criminal element does everything except hang out in a bar called the criminal element, and he knows what the bad guys look like, so where they can be found, and so he's quite effective at tracking them down. Here's Cassel situating the real Vidocq and his earned notoriety.
He went from being one of France's most wanted men, escaping prison I think 28 times, to finally becoming head of security, then a writer, and one of the most iconic figures of his generation, to the point where some of the most famous writers, whether it be Balzac or Victor Hugo, used him as inspiration. Effectively, he was larger than life, more so than any fictional character.
And as Cassel pointed out, he had a lot going on there. Vidocq's considered to be the father of the Paris police service and possibly the first private detective.
Yes, he was also a snitch. He is remembered for being a snitch. I'm not sure why this movie just sits there. It's full of combat sequences and fistfights. Cassel himself choreographed many of them. People are constantly getting kicked and pummeled within an inch of their lives, thrown overboard with a ball and chain, shot at, stabbed, chased, set fire to, and yet very little of it registers as exciting action. This is one of those period movies where all the men are kind of lived-in looking and the women are major babes with good teeth and flawless skin.
Oh, just like in real life. Thank you very much for being here this week, Lisa. We'll leave you with a look at the swashbuckling Vincent Cassel in The Emperor of Paris. Otherwise, do remember to check out our website for more movie news, and you can keep up with Encore on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
On vous accuse d'un meurtre. Cette fois, c'est la guillotine.
Moi, je vous dis que je n'ai rien fait. Je connais les coupables. Libérez-moi, je vous les ramène. Pour lutter contre des hommes comme ça, vous devez connaître leurs manies, leurs habitudes, leur monde.
J'ai oublié que vous étiez l'un d'eux.
Non, je ne suis pas l'un d'eux. Vous avez besoin de résultats, je peux vous les fournir.
Mais à quel prix?
Ma lettre de grâce.